holographic image of Ambassador Jake Morrison flickered once, twice, then vanished completely from the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The blue-skinned Altarian delegate, who had been mid-sentence about trade routes, stopped talking and stared at the empty space where the human diplomat had been standing just moments before. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species turned their various eyes, sensors and attention organs toward the now silent communication platform. Council leader Vexthara rose from her crystalline throne, her arms spreading wide in a gesture of confusion that her species used when faced with unexpected events. Her voice carried the musical quality that all Altarians possessed, but today it held a sharp note of concern. She spoke to the chamber's communication technician, a small gray being with large black eyes who operated the vast array of quantum transmitters that kept the council connected to every corner of the galaxy. The technician's fingers danced over his control panel, trying every frequency and protocol known to galactic civilization. He shook his head slowly, his large eyes reflecting genuine worry. No response came from human space. Not from Earth, not from the lunar colonies, not from the mining stations in the asteroid belt, not from the research outposts on Mars. Every human settlement and ship that had been in constant communication with the galaxy for 15 years had simply gone silent. In the viewing gallery above the main chamber, Junior Counselor Kex Moore of the Tau Ceti Union leaned forward in his seat. His people were traders by nature, and they had built profitable relationships with human merchants who carried exotic goods from Earth's diverse biosphere throughout the galaxy. The sudden silence meant credits would stop flowing, contracts would be broken, and entire trade networks would collapse. He whispered urgently to his aide, demanding immediate contact with human trading hosts. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been scheduled to arrive that very day to present her groundbreaking research on interspecies genetic compatibility to the Council's Science Committee. Her work promised to revolutionize medicine across the galaxy, potentially allowing different alien species to share treatments and cures that had previously been impossible due to biological differences. The Zephyrian Science Minister Krillinox had been looking forward to this presentation for months. His people were dying from a plague that human scientists believed they could cure. Krillinox approached the communication platform where Jake Morrison's image had been. His crystalline body reflected the chamber's lights in rainbow patterns that showed his emotional state. The patterns now swirled in deep blues and purples, colors that indicated fear and confusion among his people. He had received private messages from Elena just 2 days ago, confirming her arrival time and expressing excitement about sharing her discoveries. Now there was nothing but empty silence from human space. The insectoid delegates from the Allegates from the Thing, hive minds of Kepler 442b, clustered together in their section of the chamber, their antennae twitching in rapid patterns that served as their method of communication. They had been working with human engineers to improve their colony ships, vessels that carried millions of their eggs to new worlds where their species could expand. The humans had promised new designs that would make these journeys safer and faster. Without human technical support, entire generations of their unborn would be at risk. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner's exploration vessel, the UES Horizon, should have returned from its mission to the Andromeda expedition weeks ago. His ship carried the first samples of extragalactic life ever collected, specimens that could provide insights into how life evolved differently in other galaxies. The ship's transponder had been broadcasting regularly until 3 days ago, when it too went silent just beyond the galactic rim. Alex had been sending regular reports about strange energy readings and unusual stellar formations in the space between galaxies. General Patricia Wells had been the human military representative to the Council for 2 years. Unlike many human diplomats who spoke in flowery language about peace and cooperation, Patricia was direct and practical. She had been pushing for increased defense spending in recent council sessions, arguing that the galaxy faced unknown threats that required preparation. Many delegates had dismissed her warnings as typical human paranoia, but now her absence felt ominous. The Nebulans, beings of living gas who communicated through changes in their electromagnetic fields, began pulsing with rapid fluctuations that indicated extreme agitation. They had been sharing atmospheric processing technology with humans, learning how to make hostile worlds suitable for different forms of life. Their latest joint project involved terraforming a system of dead worlds near the galactic core, turning them into research stations where all council species could work together. As the hours passed, and no human responded to increasingly desperate attempts at communication, fear began to spread through the chamber like a physical presence. The council had grown accustomed to human participation in almost every aspect of galactic civilization. Humans served as translators between species that could not understand each other. They provided technical solutions to problems that had stumped alien scientists for centuries. They mediated disputes between species with conflicting interests. Their sudden disappearance left gaps that no other species seemed able to fill. Young Ambassador Lisa Chun had been Earth's most vocal advocate for peaceful expansion and cultural exchange. She had spent months arranging student exchange programs between Earth's universities and alien learning centers. Her final recorded message, discovered buried in archived communications, contained words that now seemed prophetic and frightening. She had said that sometimes the student must become the teacher, and the teacher must learn to fear the lesson. At the time, delegates had assumed she was speaking metaphorically about educational programs. Vexthara called for an emergency recess, sending delegates scrambling to contact their home governments and military forces. Within hours, ships from dozens of species were racing towards Sol System, desperate to understand what had happened to their human allies. But as these vessels approached the borders of human space, they encountered something that filled there. Crews with terror. An invisible barrier surrounded the entire solar system, extending far beyond the orbit of Pluto. Ships could approach this barrier, but they could not pass through it. Sensors could not penetrate it. Communication signals bounced off it like light reflecting from a mirror. It was as if humanity had wrapped their entire star system in an impenetrable shell and disappeared from the galaxy completely. The council chamber fell into chaos as reports of the barrier reached Nexus Prime. Species that had never agreed on anything found themselves united in fear and confusion. What had happened to humanity? Why had they cut themselves off from the rest of the galaxy? What did Lisa Chun's final message really mean? And most terrifying of all, what did the humans know that they were not telling anyone else? 2 weeks had passed since humanity vanished from galactic civilization, and the effects were spreading like a disease through every corner of council space. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for years now sat empty as cargo vessels remained, docked at human stations that no longer responded to docking requests. The Andromedan Mining Consortium, a massive operation that extracted rare minerals from distant star systems, faced complete collapse as their human-designed gravity manipulators stopped receiving maintenance updates and began failing one by one. In the emergency session chamber on Nexus Prime, Council Leader Vexthara stood before a wall-sized display showing the economic damage spreading across the galaxy. Red indicators marked failed trade routes. Yellow showed systems operating at reduced capacity, and an alarming number of sectors now glowed orange to indicate critical infrastructure failures. The Altarian leader's crystalline skin had lost its usual bright blue color and now appeared dull gray, a sign of stress that her species could not hide. The Zephyrian delegate, Krillinogs, had spent days searching through archived communications from human scientists, looking for any clue about their sudden disappearance. His people were dying from the plague that Elena Rodriguez had promised to cure, and every day of delay meant more deaths in Zephyrian colonies. Deep in the message archives, he discovered recordings from Dr. Kevin Shaw, a human xenopsychologist, who had studied alien behavior patterns for the University of New Geneva. Dr. Shaw's research papers had been dismissed by most council members as academic speculation when they were first published. He wrote about humanity's tendency toward what he called adaptive strategic patience, describing how humans would observe and learn from situations for long periods before taking decisive action. His papers contained warnings that humans never revealed their full capabilities during conflicts, instead showing only enough strength to achieve their immediate goals while keeping their true potential hidden. The insectoid hive minds had been frantically trying to contact their human engineering partners, but their attempts at communication meant only silence. Their colony ships, massive vessels designed to carry millions of eggs to new worlds, were suffering critical system failures. Without human technical support, the modifications that human engineers had made to these ships were far more complex than the hive minds had realized, and now they could not maintain or repair the advanced systems on their own. Captain Maya Patel's Deep Space Reconnaissance ship, the U.S. Pathfinder, had been conducting classified surveys in disputed territory near the Vegan Empire's borders when all human vessels received mysterious recall orders. Intelligence reports suggested that Maya had discovered something significant during her mission, but the nature of her discovery remained locked behind the impenetrable barrier surrounding human space. The Vegan Empire's military commanders were particularly nervous about this, as Maya's ship had been operating near their most sensitive military installations. War primed Exandra, the Council's military advisor, had begun a comprehensive review of every combat engagement involving human forces over the past 15 years. What she discovered filled her with growing horror. In every single conflict, battle, and military exercise, humans had demonstrated precisely the amount of force needed to achieve their objectives and nothing more. They had never shown their full military capabilities, never revealed their most advanced weapons, never pushed their technology to its limits. Their pattern was so consistent that it could not be coincidental. Humans had been deliberately concealing their true strength while carefully studying how other species fought, what technologies they used, and what their weaknesses were. Every military cooperation program, every joint training exercise, every shared defense initiative had been an opportunity for humans to learn while revealing as little as possible about themselves. Ben Williams, a civilian contractor who had been upgrading alien defense systems with human technology throughout Council space, had left behind encrypted files that no alien codebreaker could penetrate. The upgrades themselves were beginning to exhibit unexpected capabilities, as if they had been designed for purposes far beyond their stated functions. Defense stations that were supposed to protect against pirates were now showing energy readings that suggested they could engage capital warships. Communication arrays that should have handled routine traffic were demonstrating processing power that seemed designed for coordinating massive military operations. The Nebulans, with their ability to process vast amounts of information simultaneously, had been tasked with analyzing patterns in human behavior over the past 2 years. Their findings were disturbing. Human diplomatic requests, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges all showed subtle but consistent patterns that suggested long-term strategic planning. Humans had been positioning themselves throughout the galaxy in ways that gave them access to critical resources, key transportation routes, and important military positions. Dr. Sam Rodriguez, brother of the missing Elena Rodriguez, had been working at the Council's Central Science Station on quantum physics research that aimed to develop faster methods of communication across galactic distances. His research notes, left behind when all humans disappeared, contained references to detection methods that could reach beyond traditional galactic boundaries. The implications were frightening. If humans had developed the ability to detect threats from outside the galaxy, what had they seen that caused them to cut all contact with their allies? Junior, Counselor Kexmore, had been reviewing financial records and discovered that human companies had been quietly buying up controlling interests in critical infrastructure throughout Council space. Mining operations, manufacturing facilities, transportation networks, and communication systems all showed significant human investment that had seemed like normal business activity at the time. Now it appeared that humans had been systematically gaining control over the galaxy's most important systems while their diplomatic representatives spoke about cooperation and friendship. The most disturbing discovery came from the Tau Ceti Union's intelligence services. They had detected unusual energy signatures from the direction of human space. Not the electromagnetic signatures of weapons or engines, but something else entirely. The readings suggested massive construction projects using technologies that exceeded anything in the Council's scientific databases. Whatever humans were building behind their impenetrable barrier was beyond the understanding of any known galactic civilization. As panic continued to spread through Council space, one question haunted every delegate and military commander. If humanity had been planning this disappearance for years, if they had been secretly studying and preparing while maintaining the appearance of friendship, what threat had they discovered that required such extreme measures? The silence from human space was no longer just mysterious. It was terrifying, because it suggested that something even more frightening was coming. The breakthrough came at 3 a.m, Galactic Standard Time, when the Zephyrian Deep Space Monitoring Station at the edge of Council territory detected massive energy signatures coming from the direction of human space. The technician on duty, a young crystalline being named Zexhai, almost dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction because the energy levels were beyond anything in the galactic databases. The signatures were not weapons fire or engine emissions, but something else entirely, something that suggested construction on a scale that defied comprehension. Zexhai's supervisor arrived within minutes and confirmed that the readings were accurate. Whatever humans were building behind their impenetrable barrier involved technologies that exceeded the combined knowledge of every Council species. The energy patterns suggested not just one massive project, but dozens of interconnected construction sites working simultaneously throughout the Sol system. The power requirements alone would have drained the output of multiple stars. Yet somehow humans were generating and controlling these enormous forces. Meanwhile, in the Council's archaeological archives, deep beneath Nexus Prime, a forgotten report was finally being examined by desperate researchers looking for any clue about humanity's disappearance. Captain Nicole Baker had submitted this report just hours before the Great Silence began, but it had been buried in bureaucratic channels and dismissed as routine archaeological curiosity. Nicole had been exploring ancient ruins on a dead world at the galactic edge when she discovered something that changed everything. The ruins were older than any previously known civilization, carved from materials that did not exist naturally in the galaxy. Inside the deepest chamber, Nicole had found warnings written in a language that predated galactic civilization by millions of years. The warnings spoke of something called the Devourers, entities that came from the darkness between galaxies every 50,000 years to consume entire star systems. The ancient builders had tried to fight these invaders and failed, leaving only their warnings for future civilizations to discover. Nicole's report included detailed photographs of the alien writing and her translation attempts. The final entry in her log mentioned confirming a timeline and recommended immediate emergency protocols. She had transmitted her findings directly to Earth's government and military command, bypassing normal Council channels. Now her ship, the U-East Pathfinder, was nowhere to be found, and the ruins she had discovered were being studied by Council archaeologists who wished they had never seen them. Commander Ryan Foster's Tactical Analysis Division had been tracking patterns in recent alien piracy and unexplained ship disappearances throughout Council space. His data showed incidents that initially appeared random, but revealed a disturbing pattern when examined together. Ships were vanishing in ways that suggested systematic probing of Council defenses, not by known hostile forces or common pirates, but by something else that was testing the galaxy's response capabilities and military readiness. Ryan's final transmission to Earth, sent through encrypted military channels just before the silence began, contained a simple message that now carried terrifying implications. He had written that his analysis confirmed the timeline and recommended immediate implementation of Protocol 7. No Council member had ever heard of Protocol 7, but the implications were clear that humans had been preparing for something specific, and the time for action had arrived. Dr. Sam Rodriguez's quantum physics research had been focused on developing communication methods that could reach beyond the traditional boundaries of the galaxy. His laboratory notes, left behind at the Council's science station, revealed that he had been working on detection systems capable of monitoring the empty space between galaxies. The final entries in his research journal mentioned successful detection of massive objects moving through intergalactic space toward the Milky Way galaxy. The objects Sam had detected were not ships or asteroids, but something far more disturbing. His calculations suggested entities of enormous size, moving at speeds that should have been impossible, following trajectories that would bring them into contact with the galactic rim within months. His final note mentioned that the approaching entities matched descriptions found in ancient archaeological sites, confirming humanity's worst fears about what was coming. The truth began to emerge when Junior Ambassador Kate Morrison, sister of the missing Jake Morrison, contacted the Council through an emergency encrypted channel that bypassed the barrier around human space. Her message was brief but devastating. Humanity had detected an extinction-level threat approaching the galaxy 18 months ago through deep space monitoring systems that other species did not know existed. Every diplomatic interaction since that discovery had been preparation for what was coming. Kate explained that humans had spent those 18 months studying every Council species, learning their capabilities, weaknesses, and technologies, not for conquest, but for survival. The trade agreements had secretly included defensive technologies that other species had not recognized. The cultural exchanges had been reconnaissance missions to assess which civilizations could be saved and which lacked the resources to survive what was approaching. Every act of friendship and cooperation had been preparation for the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The silence was not abandonment, Kate revealed, but mobilization. Humanity was using every resource, every piece of technology, and every bit of knowledge they had gained from their alien allies to build the galaxy's only hope of survival. The construction projects detected by Zephyrian monitors were defensive installations on a scale never before attempted, designed to protect not just humanity, but all galactic civilization from the Devourers. Kate's final words before the communication channel closed sent waves of terror through the Council chamber. First contact with the Devourers would occur in approximately 6 months when their advanced scouts reached the galactic rim. Every ship that had vanished, every probe that had gone missing, every unexplained energy reading had been early encounters with entities that consumed stellar matter and left dead systems in their wake. Humanity was building Fortress Sol not to hide from the galaxy, but to create a final sanctuary where galactic civilization could make its last stand. The Council members sat in stunned silence as they realized that humanity's apparent betrayal was actually the greatest act of service any species had ever performed. While other civilizations had remained ignorant and comfortable, humans had shouldered the burden of impossible knowledge and begun the desperate work of preparing for survival against odds that defied comprehension. The revelation struck the Council like a physical blow as they began to understand the true scope of humanity's deception. Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange, every moment of friendship and cooperation had been carefully orchestrated to assess and ultimately protect the galaxy from a threat that no other species had even known existed. The Altarian delegates found themselves recalculating every interaction they had ever had with human diplomats, realizing that what they had interpreted as genuine interest in their culture had actually been strategic intelligence gathering. Colonel Danny Martinez appeared on the Council's emergency communication system exactly 72 hours after Kate Morrison's initial contact. His image was transmitted through channels that the Council's best technicians could not trace or intercept, demonstrating that humanity possessed communication technologies far beyond anything they had previously revealed. Danny's uniform bore insignia that no Council member recognized, suggesting military ranks and organizations that had been kept completely secret from galactic civilization. Danny's message was direct and carried the weight of absolute authority. Humanity had spent the past 18 months not just preparing their own defenses, but building what he called the final bastion around the Sol system. This was not a fortress designed to keep others out, but a sanctuary designed to protect the last remnants of galactic civilization when the Devourers completed their consumption of the galaxy. The impenetrable barrier that surrounded human space was not a wall of secrecy, but the outer shell of the most advanced defensive system ever constructed. The Colonel explained that humanity faced a terrible choice when they first detected the Devourers approaching through intergalactic space. They could warn the galaxy immediately and watch as panic destroyed civilization long before the threat arrived, or they could use the time they had been given to prepare in secret while maintaining the illusion of normal diplomatic relations. They had chosen the harder path, accepting that other species would see them as betrayers in order to give the galaxy its only chance of survival. Dr. Jennifer Scott's xenorchaeology team had been working frantically across 17 different worlds, uncovering evidence of previous galactic civilizations that had faced the Devourers throughout cosmic history. Her research revealed a horrifying pattern that repeated every 50,000 years like clockwork. Advanced civilizations would rise, flourish, and spread across the galaxy, only to be completely consumed when the Devourers returned from their journey through dark space between galaxies. Jennifer's findings showed that the Devourers were not malevolent in any way that biological life could understand. They were entities of pure energy that consumed stellar matter to sustain themselves during their eternal migration between universes. They had no more awareness of the civilizations they destroyed than a forest fire had awareness of the individual trees it consumed. This knowledge made them more terrifying, not less, because it meant that negotiation, diplomacy, or appeals to mercy were impossible. Admiral Chris Thompson's fleet had been secretly retrofitting Council member ships with hidden human defensive systems for over a year. The routine maintenance that human technicians had performed on alien vessels throughout the galaxy had actually been the installation of advanced shielding, weapons, and life support systems that other species did not recognize. Every ship that had undergone human maintenance was now capable of surviving encounters that would have destroyed them completely in their original configurations. The Admiral's revelation that thousands of alien vessels had been secretly upgraded sent shockwaves through the Council chamber. Species that had considered themselves military powers realized that their fleets had been dependent on human technology without their knowledge. The upgrades had been so seamlessly integrated that alien engineers had not detected them. Yet they represented advances in defensive capability that exceeded anything in Council databases. Engineer Maria Lopez broke her own 18-month silence to reveal the true nature of the civilian construction projects that humans had helped build throughout Council space. The communication relays, mining stations, research outposts, and trading centers that had seemed like normal, infrastructure development, were actually components of a galaxy-spanning defensive network. Each installation contained hidden elements that could coordinate with the final bastion around Sol to create protective fields around entire star systems. Maria's engineering logs showed construction projects on hundreds of worlds that had been disguised as routine development, but were actually preparation for the ultimate battle. Underground bunkers had been built to protect civilian populations. Orbital platforms had been designed to serve as refugee centers. Industrial complexes had been modified to produce defensive equipment at a moment's notice. Every human construction project for the past 2 years had served the dual purpose of maintaining normal galactic commerce while preparing for species-wide survival. The revelation reached its climax when President Catherine Wells, sister of the missing General Patricia Wells, addressed the Council directly through a communication system that projected her image with perfect clarity despite the barrier around human space. Her message was both an ultimatum and an offer of salvation. The Devourers would reach the galactic rim in less than 4 months, and their advanced scouts were already probing the outer systems where human deep space monitors had detected them. Catherine explained that humanity had built the final bastion not just as a military installation, but as an ark capable of preserving the essential elements of every galactic civilization. The Sol system had been transformed into a combination fortress and repository where the knowledge, culture, and genetic material of hundreds of species could be protected until the Devourers completed their passage and moved on to consume other galaxies. She offered the Council 2 choices that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. They could join humanity in the final bastion, bringing their most essential people and resources to Sol, where they would survive as a united galaxy, or they could remain scattered throughout Council space and face extinction when the Devourers arrived. The choice had to be made within 72 hours, because the logistics of moving entire civilizations required precise coordination, and there would be no second chances. The President's final words carried the weight of species survival and the burden of terrible knowledge. Humanity had accepted the role of galactic protector, not because they wanted power over other species, but because they had been the first to detect the approaching threat, and the only ones capable of building a defense that might succeed. Silence that had seemed like abandonment was actually the galaxy's only hope for survival. The 72 hours that President Catherine Wells had given the Council passed like minutes as species across the galaxy made the most important decision in their civilization's history. The Altarian collective voted unanimously to trust humanity and began loading their most essential people and resources onto ships bound for Sol system. The crystalline beings had always valued logic over emotion, and the evidence of humanity's preparations convinced them that joining the final bastion offered their only chance of survival. The vegan empire, proud and militaristic, declared they would fight the Devourers alone rather than abandon their territory to seek shelter behind human defenses. Their war council believed that accepting human protection would mean surrendering their independence forever, and they preferred to die as free warriors than live as protected refugees. Emperor Vexthul ordered his fleets to defensive positions around their core worlds, determined to prove that vegan courage could succeed where ancient civilizations had failed. The insectoid hive minds of Kepler 442b faced a crisis that their collective consciousness had never experienced before. Half of their interconnected colonies voted to trust humanity and seek safety in Sol system, while the other half chose to remain and protect their egg-laying worlds. The division created the first fracture in their species' unified mind, splitting them into separate factions that could no longer communicate as one voice. As alien fleets began racing toward Sol system, they witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about the limits of engineering and physics. The barrier that had surrounded human space for months suddenly became transparent, revealing the true scope of humanity's achievement. The entire solar system had been transformed into an interconnected network of battle stations, artificial habitats, and weaponized planets that defied comprehension. Earth itself had been enclosed in a sphere of crystalline armor that reflected the light of distant stars like a jewel. The moon had been converted into a massive weapons platform, bristling with energy cannons that could destroy capital ships at ranges measured in light minutes. Mars glowed with the heat of massive industrial complexes that produced defensive equipment around the clock. Even the asteroid belt had been reorganized into a defensive grid where every rock served as a sensor post or weapons emplacement. Commander Alex Turner's ship, the UE's Horizon, finally returned from its mission to the space between galaxies with reconnaissance data that confirmed humanity's worst fears. Alex had witnessed the Devourers consuming entire star systems in the Andromeda Galaxy, turning vibrant suns into cold, dark matter in a matter of hours. His recordings showed entities of impossible size that moved through space like living storms, leaving nothing but empty void where stellar civilizations had once flourished. The advanced scouts of the Devourers had already reached the outer rim of the galaxy, and Alex's data confirmed that they were moving faster than humanity's most pessimistic projections. The main force would arrive not in 4 months, as originally calculated, but in 6 weeks. This discovery sent emergency signals throughout the final bastion, as defensive systems that had been designed for gradual deployment were rushed into operation with desperate speed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez emerged from Earth's deep laboratories with research that represented humanity's greatest breakthrough and their most dangerous gamble. Her work on interspecies genetic compatibility had revealed something that no previous galactic civilization had discovered. The Devourers were not malevolent destroyers, but desperate refugees from their own dying universe, entities that consumed stellar matter because it was the only energy source that could sustain them during their eternal migration between dimensions. Elena's research suggested that the Devourers had been following the same destructive pattern for millions of years because they had never encountered a civilization advanced enough to offer them an alternative. Her breakthrough came from combining human scientific methods with alien technologies that the Council had shared during their years of cooperation. The solution she proposed was as revolutionary as it was terrifying because it required trusting entities that had destroyed countless civilizations. The first battle between the Devourers' advanced scouts and the outer defenses of the galaxy began at the edge of vegan space, where Emperor Vexthal's fleets met entities that consumed energy itself. The vegan warships fought with courage that inspired legends, but their weapons passed through the Devourers like light through water. Within hours, 3 star systems had been drained of all energy, leaving behind dark matter and the frozen remains of worlds that would never see sunlight again. Admiral Rachel Brooks coordinated the galaxy's first unified military response from her command center deep within the final bastion. Ships from dozens of species that had never fought together now operated under human tactical coordination, their weapons and defenses enhanced by technologies that no single civilization could have developed alone. The battle that followed would determine whether galactic civilization survived its greatest test or joined the countless dead empires that had fallen before the Devourers. The climax came when Elena Rodriguez transmitted her offer directly to the Devourers through communication methods that reached across dimensional barriers. Instead of fighting entities that had never been defeated, humanity proposed sharing technology that could stabilize dying universes and provide sustainable energy sources that did not require consuming inhabited star systems. The response came not in words, but in actions as the Devourers' advanced scouts slowed their consumption and began transmitting complex mathematical patterns that served as their first attempt at communication with biological life the galaxy held. its breadth as humanity's greatest gamble played out in the space between stars. Elena's research had suggested that the Devourers were not evil, but simply desperate, and her offer represented the first hope they had encountered in millions of years of migration. A final bastion's defensive systems remained active and ready for battle, but for the first time in galactic history, there was a possibility that war could be avoided through understanding rather than force. The Council learned that humanity's panic-inducing silence had been their species' greatest act of service, shouldering the burden of impossible knowledge while preparing salvation, not just for galactic civilization, but for the entities that had threatened to destroy it. The silence was broken, not by weapons fire, but by the beginning of cooperation between dimensions, turning potential extinction into unprecedented opportunity for growth, an understanding that would reshape the galaxy forever.